My name is Jerry Gill, and today is October 10, 2008. I'm visiting with Jack Holt in his home east of Norman, Oklahoma, and this interview is for the O State Storage Project of the Oklahoma Oral History Program. Jack, can you share a little information about your early life, where you grew up, your family, etc.?
I was born into a family that raised 9 kids. And I was born at Cashin, Oklahoma, which is out west of Guthrie. And my brother and I burnt the barn down when I was about 4 years old, and we moved right after that. I think so we wouldn't have to rebuild the barn. And over to northeast of Guthrie in Mount Summit School District, and that's where I went to grade school up through the 8th grade, and then we moved to Winnsboro, Texas, northeast Texas. That's just southeast of Paris. And where I went to high school, and after high school, went into the Navy and spent 4 years in the Navy, and that was during the Korean War, and I was stationed in Yokosuka, Japan, in electronics repair. And when I got out of the Navy, of course, I had the GI Bill, and so I could go to college on the GI Bill and chose Oklahoma A&M College, since my folks had moved back to Oklahoma City, and so I had in-state tuition and could go to college in Oklahoma.
Jack, your parents kind of moved around a little bit. What did your parents do for a living?
At that time, they were farmers. Yeah, always been farmers up till probably when I was in the 8th grade. My dad started doing some work in the oil field, and so worked in the oil field for 2 or 3 years after that. And but basically, he was always a farmer. Grew up on the farm and raised. He only went to 4th grade, so he, that's all he knew is farming. So, doke.
Well, I understand, Jack, there's a story about how you got to OSU. What influenced you to come to Oklahoma State University?
Well,
I was at that time Oklahoma A&M.
This was summer of 1954, and I was working on an estate in Colorado Springs called the Navigators, where they getting ready to move their office from Los Angeles to Colorado Springs. And I thought about college, and I sent off, and I thought of 3 schools. One was OU and OBU and Hardin-Simmons. And I sent off for all 3 of their applications, was praying about which one, and I couldn't get any clear, I wanted God's choice, not mine, and I couldn't get any clear decision on which one. Anyone, they were just all 3 good, but I couldn't figure out which one. That I wanted God to tell me which one. So I was going to spend a whole night in prayer about it, and I was walking around on the lawn in the moonlight, and I just opened up my Bible. In the moonlight, I could see it's Luke, and I thought, well, maybe he'll give me the answer out of Luke. And I went over in the parking lot and turned on a dome light and started reading in the book of Luke. And when I think it was the 8th chapter, I came to the parable of the sower. And I thought, well, so that's Oklahoma A&M, because they, farm kids, they're sowers. And all of a sudden I had a real strong conviction, and that wasn't even one of the 3. So I sent off for an application at Oklahoma A&M and started the fall of 1954.
Great story. So what years you in the fall of 54, and then you were there, you graduated in?
59. I stretched it 4-year college into 4.5 years, because I was involved in the band and traveling and announcing and counseling the dorm, and had to take a light load, and it made it 4.5 years rather than 4 years.
Well, you talking about those years, and particularly 57, 58, those were some pretty significant years for Oklahoma State University. I mean, I talked about, they were celebrating some anniversaries. The name change from Oklahoma A&M to Oklahoma State, moving from the Missouri Valley into the Big 8,
right.
Big 7. We made it to the Big 8 conference.
Right.
You're the Pistol Pete mascot. Well, first of all, let me concentrate this and ask you, Jack, what did you and your fellow students think of the name change in the university? Was that popular? What?
Oh, yes. Of course, OU fought it tooth and toenail. They didn't want it changed. They didn't want us to be a university. And they really, really fought it. But there's nothing they could do about it. But the school and the students wanted it to change to Oklahoma State University. Now, Texas A&M went through the similar change, and but they didn't want to lose their Aggie status. See, so they changed theirs to Texas A&M University, and OSU could have kept it that way, but they wanted to change it to Oklahoma State, so they went and changed.
You were an agronomy student. I maybe get him a story a little bit, but just asking that. So did some of the ag students, did they feel a little bit upset about losing agriculture out of the name, Oklahoma Agriculture Mechanical College?
Well, we understood that, they're going to lose the Aggie status. I mean, Aggie jokes were really I still tell Aggie jokes, but I missed that part of it. But, basically it was an improvement on the school, and they were stepping up, and they wanted that to happen. So I think the consensus across the campus was they were glad it was going to change. But they had to change the mascot because they weren't Aggies anymore, And the school had to add a lot of different programs, and to become a full-fledged university, there was a lot had to happen. Not just a name change, but a lot of other things.
And what about it? Kind of speaking of that, you moving into the conference. I mean, was that
right.
exciting?
Well, they were in the Missouri Valley before that, and then they went into the Big 7, which had to change it to Big 8 because it added one more team. And so for several years it was Big 8, and then they changed it to Big 12.
Was that considered more prestigious, I think, by the students that time to move into the Big 8 conference?
Oh, yeah.
And did they look forward to playing OU as a conference rival then at that point?
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was, because, see, we were in Missouri Valley before that,
yes.
And with different teams.
Jack, you alluded to mascot. I've got to ask you, the name change, moving in the new conference, kind of prompted a change, from Cowboys to, from Aggies to Cowboys, and so we needed a new mascot.
Right.
And first, let me ask you first, how did students like to change the name Cowboys? Did they like the name Cowboys, and did it resonate?
Yeah, they really did. Of course, they knew that Aggies, that was no longer because they weren't Aggies anymore. But then they had do you want to hear about the contest that they had?
That's what I was just going to ask you.
You were going to ask about that?
I understand you had a role in the selecting, so if you
could
share that with us, we'd love for you to, Jack. Thank you.
They had mentioned in the Collegian, the newspaper, that they were going to have a contest to name a new mascot. Well, the decal that they still use was, I think, inaugurated in 1923, so it had been around for many, many years, and they still use it. It's kind of really obvious that, it'd be good to have a mascot, a caricature of that particular decal, So they had a contest, and the day it came out, they came out in the paper a little tear-out application to enter, the contest.
And Jack, now this was, what month and year was this?
Well, this was early 57. They just changed that summer, okay. And it was just that fall. Fall probably school hadn't probably started been about a month maybe.
So this is the fall semester.
Yeah, fall of 57.
Okay.
And so when I went over to the student union to eat breakfast one morning, and they had just dropped a bundle of papers by the door, just tied up with a string by the door of the cafeteria there, and so I picked up a paper and went in. It's about 7:30, and I had a class in the classroom building, which is the next building. I think they're still there, isn't it? They still have a classroom building at 8 o'clock. So I just ate a donut and a cup of coffee and looking at the paper while I was doing this, and here's the tear out of the entry to the mascot, and then it said turn them in at the bookstore, which is right across the hall from the cafeteria. And so I, wrote out mine, a cowboy with a paper mache head of Pistol Pete after the decal. And I couldn't remember how to spell mache, so I just put large. I just put large, and so I took it over there when I finished and walked into the bookstore, and they were setting up a table, and three guys, actually two guys and a girl, and they set this table up, and that's where they were going to collect these entries. They were just setting it up that morning. They put a cardboard box on the table. I handed him my entry, and he looked at it, and he questioned me, what do you mean by large? And I said, well, it's mache, paper mache head. He said, okay, and he put it in the box. It was the first one in the box. I cast the very first vote for Pistol Pete.
Great story. Well, Jack, let me ask you a little bit now.
Okay.
Did you have other options? I mean, you select mascot. Did they have something else? I mean, what were your?
Yeah, the second choice that came in was Cowboy on a Horse, and I think that's why they have Bullet. That was the second choice. They got a lot of votes, but nothing. I mean, the majority of the votes were Pistol Pete with a paper mache head.
Did they have, Jack? Did they have the options like option one, Pistol Pete the head?
No, it was just blank. You just put in what you thought would be a good mascot.
Okay, I see.
And I think they said the majority of them were paper mache head with Pistol Pete on the same as the decal.
Now, did the students know that we would be called the Cowboys? I mean, so
Yes, they had already decided on that.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So, and that was a good deal, because
was this was the mascot a big deal for the OSU students?
yes, it was.
Mm-hmm.
It really was.
Was it popularly received in
Oh yeah.
student body? They really liked the idea of Frank Eaton character with a big
Yeah.
head.
They really did. It was very popular, and it got most all the votes. I mean, there were just a few other suggestions. Second choice with most of them were what would end up Bullet, but it was in Oklahoma being a cowboy state. Cowboys. Oklahoma's right in the center of the cowboy era. The cattle drives from Texas across Oklahoma to Kansas, the railhead, for about 10 years is what established cowboys. I mean, there's a few cowboys working on ranches, but those cattle drives was what really inaugurated and caused the cowboy popularity to become what it is today and what it has been. And I tell people, Oklahoma's always gotten the brunt of, like the Dust Bowl days, poor Okie, and I mean, Oklahoma wasn't the only one in the Dust Bowl. Southern Kansas and Texas Panhandle, northern Texas, and part of Arkansas. I mean, it's a big circle, and yet we got nailed, poor Okie, and everybody thinks of Oklahoma's the only one, that are poor and had trouble and dust and all this. But the rich cattlemen in Texas drove their cattle across Oklahoma and got their money in Kansas, and all we got out of it was when the cattle crapped on us all the way across. But that's just the cowboy life, and Frank Eaton was a typical cowboy. I mean, he wasn't. I mean, he's very. The cowboy way is honesty and hard times and dust and tough. And he was the epitome of all that. And
well, Jack, picking up on that, you good point. I mean, so you're kind of saying Pistol Pete represents maybe sort of the spirit of Oklahoma and of Oklahoma State University.
Oh, absolutely,
and Cowboys.
Absolutely.
Well, did you think it's special that Pistol Pete, the mascot, is really is a character of a real live Frank Eaton,
absolutely.
Frank Pistol Pete Eaton.
Absolutely.
Is that special for you as an alum? That's
it
not
really
an
is.
animal or some kind of mythical Jayhawk bird or something. I mean, that it's a cowboy named after a real person.
Yeah, absolutely. And two other universities took off on it too and named their mascot after Pistol Pete. Frank Eaton had a marvelous life. Tough, hard times, but and he was the epitome of a cowboy, the cowboy life, and the hard times that they went through. And he was a lawman. He was, he was even a lawman in Guthrie, where I grew up as a grade school. But he was, I think, a tremendous caricature, and that they named the mascot of Oklahoma State after him.
Speaking of Frank Eaton, you're talking about we're kind of celebrating 50 years and changes now. So you're
Right.
sharing with us. This is. He died in 1958. Frank
He
Eaton is
absolutely died the same year they started Pistol Pete, the mascot. So this is 50 years of remembering his death as well. See, so it's uncanny that he died the same year. It really is.
What was that when he died? Was that I guess was kind of big news for Oklahoma State people?
Oh yeah,
Stillwater there.
yeah, it is. In fact, they had a big write-up in the newspaper, and I have a copy of that newspaper the day after he died, and that'll be part of the archives. And but it's kind of yellow and faded.
Well, Jack, what was? Can you recall the first time you actually saw Pete with the mache, head on the field? I mean, can you share some of your, that experience with us?
Yes, I was glad to see it. Now I understand that, and it may not be true or not, but I understand that Disney Labs made that first head for him. But I mean, that's just what I heard. I don't know if it's true or not. But
I know, Jack, they make the head now. I don't know if they made that first one or not, but they do now. I know.
well, I heard that they must still do it then.
They do.
So yeah, I'd heard that they did, and but
So
yeah,
was it a football game where you saw Pete? Or
the first one, and I think it was the OU game, but I'm not positive. But you have that picture that taken, and I'm in that picture, standing there. I was standing there talking to Lanice Kraft. She's married to a football player, Jerry Kraft, and when they snapped the picture. But
so that was the fall of '58.
fall of '58, late fall, because the people had coats on, and I had a coat on.
Was there? Can you recall maybe the crowd reaction to first time Pete was out on the field or introduced? Was there a kind of a buzz a little bit about that?
No, I don't remember it. I do not remember. Just when he walked on the field, it's just not there. I just don't remember it.
Was it I guess sort of follow-up question is now, Pete's become such a, just call him Pete,
Yeah.
but Pete's become such a icon
Uh-huh.
of OSU and OSU sports that wherever he goes, I mean, little kids and birthday
Oh, yeah.
parties and grade schools and out in the field, I mean, it's really such a significant symbol. Did it take a while for that to catch on, Peter? I mean, did people identify pretty quickly with him as our mascot? I mean, you recall
I think it took time, because that didn't happen real fast. Because when it grew because they didn't realize that they could get him to do that. See, so once people found out that they could have him come and do that, then they tell their friends, and and it just spreads, and so it happened gradually. It didn't just come real fast. I don't think it was a gradual deal.
Well, did you, Jack, in your, maybe kind of changing just a little bit, in your student experience at Oklahoma State University, could you share a little bit about campus activities, you're involved in programs you participated in as a student at Oklahoma State?
All right, first thing is they called me in and asked me if I'd become a counselor in the dorm because Dean James Miller was the dean of men, and I would work directly under him. They needed counselors real bad, and they knew I'd been in the Navy, and so, typically if they wanted to hire a student, they'd have to wait till he become about maybe a junior to be a little bit older than those in the dorm he'd counsel. See, so, but if they found somebody that's already older, then he started me out as a counselor second semester. So in West Bennett, I was in West Bennett, yeah, and I was counselor for the athletes. First floor of West Bennett, the whole floor was athletes, football, tennis, wrestling, you name it, And they didn't have an athletic dorm. That was it, and I was their counselor. So that was the start of the activities, and of course I was involved in the Baptist Student Center, and we'd play touch football games, and I was involved in quite a bit of sports with the BSU. So, plus being a counselor in the dorm, and I played in the band, so I traveled to all the football games. And then I think it was my sophomore year that Hiram asked me to announce for the band when the one announcer graduated. So I started announcing as well as keeping the play, and I announced for the band. Symphonic band in the spring when they would go on tour. I'd travel with them and announce for them.
And you were drumline?
I was a drummer, yeah, snare drum. Played in high school and college, so. But
what was your favorite song?
Stars and Stripes Forever.
John Philip Sousa.
Oh man, I'm telling you, that raised chill bumps on my back.
Well, tell us a little bit about your you're announcing that, did you? I mean, now the guy says, you know, the cowboy marching band really.
Yeah, well,
is that
the
what
main
you're doing?
phrase that we used back in those days, right at the end, you say the most colorful band in all the land. You know,
Can you give us your line, Jack?
The most colorful band in all the land. You know.
That's great.
But yeah, in that picture you saw where they still had A&M on their, you know, the uniforms, but you notice they had an OSU patch on the shoulder. So it took a couple 3 years before they got new uniforms. You know, they just didn't have the money to just go out and buy all new uniforms. So, but that took place, you know, over time, and they got new uniforms, but those that we had were beautiful. So.
And now Hiram Henry was he the
Hiram? Yeah, in fact, he was the director the whole time.
So now, was that a little unusual, or was that common that students were announced the band?
At that time, yeah, they always chose a student.
Okay.
What do they do now? Somebody other than in a band, or former band member or something, or just anybody they can get that's a good announcer?
Well, they've got some of the boys, I think they kind of audition, but it's not a student.
I see. Yeah, at that time, it was only students did it. And we only had, I think, 96 members of the band, and now they got over 200.
Well, so how did they work, Jack? If you're announcing, you're playing the drum and you're announcing, are you doing it from the field?
No, we go up in the press box.
Okay, so
yeah.
You would not then participate in the halftime ceremonies typically.
No, I was announcing for it at halftime. They were marching on the field, and I'd tell each formation what they were doing, and they don't do much of that anymore, do they? They don't tell what every formation is, but we had a write-up. In fact, I have a lot of those plans that they're in that office up there. I kept those, and shows the design, you know, and what the formation is and what I said and the whole deal. And there's a picture of me in the press box announcing down there at the microphone.
Did you get to make some trips with the band then?
Oh yeah.
Well, what was your favorite trip? You got a memory of a special trip?
OU. Hoping we'd beat them. Yeah, hoping we'd beat them. My wife just came in from work.
Okay. Did you get to go out of state?
Oh yeah. Yeah, wherever the band went, I went. So the first year, of course, I was just playing in the band, but after that, I was announcing.
So Jack, back in your major again was in
field of agronomy with a soils major. I just tell people I just wanted something down to earth, so I majored in soils.
Oh goodness. Well, do you remember there's some special professors that you remember? There's someone administrators that were special in your development, your student life.
I always admired Dr. Thorne. He was the head of the department, and I got a picture of him, and he signed a paper. This is my wife Donna. This, but as far as individual names, there was one professor that I remember. We had it was the day before the finals, and we had a flood in Stillwater, and I was a good friend of Dick Reynolds, who had a trailer out on the east side of town on Stillwater Creek, and so we was out there, and we heard that they were flooding, you know, and in Norman, and there was a house there next by had handicapped kids in it, and a dam broke in northern Stillwater, and it roared down through and flooded the east side of Stillwater in that creek that's just east of Main Street, and we couldn't get back to town. It was 4 feet over the top of that bridge, and we had to spend the night out there in a farmhouse, and it happened to be the assistant band director's house. Slept on the floor. I had a final at 8 o'clock the next morning in soils when my major. The thing went down just enough we could get across, and I made that 8 o'clock final, and I flunked it. I mean, I had a straight A going into that final, and I flunked it so bad. I was so tired I couldn't think. And I flunked it and almost flunked the course. It dropped my whole grade to a D-. I just barely passed. he called me in and he said, Jack, what happened? He said, you had a straight A going in and you failed the final so bad. He said, what? And so I related this story about the flood, and I spent the night sleeping on a hardwood floor. And I said, I just so tired I couldn't think. And he said, I'll let you take it over. And I said, no. I said, that grade will remind me of what I went through and what happened that night more than if I had an A on that transcript. So I let it stay. And so I remember him. I think his name was Brown, but I'm not sure. But he offered to let me take that final over again, but I refused. I said, no, I'll just keep it.
So back kind of your activities again. You're in the dorm. You was a counselor there. The residents all been at West Bennett. The band. Any other student activities you're involved with, Jack?
Well, I ran for president of the senior class my senior year, and Bob Doty, who you'll read about in that story in the middle of that notebook, was a football player. He came to me and said, Jack, he said, we don't have time to be running for no president. He said, we got to spend all this time with students helping people. So I dropped out, and my opponent won it without any opposition whatsoever. I would have been president of the senior class because I was well known. He wasn't, but that's just a story.
Did you have some favorite places on campus? Favorite buildings or favorite places there on the campus?
Yeah, I like sitting by Theta Pond. You know, just watching the water and ducks and BSU, Gallagher Hall, and the football stadium, and you know. And I was a counselor in West Bennett, Hanner, and Thatcher. At that time, it was men's dorms. Both those were the men's dorms. I was counselor of all three of those. And so the reason it was asked, Dean Miller called me in one day. He said, Jack, he said, I have a special assignment for you as a counselor. He said, we got a unique situation going on over in Thatcher Hall. And at that time, I was in Hanner Hall, which is right there close to the classroom building. Anyway, he said, we've got 8 guys over there in that dorm firing firecrackers. He said, now, we got some Korean War veterans over there, and every time a firecracker goes off, it ruins their whole evening of study. He said, a lot of them will just dive under the bed. I mean, they're just shell-shocked. He said, I want you to go over and take, he said, they have run off 3 counselors already. He said, I want to see if you can take it and do something with it. And he said, now, if you can catch them at it, he said, if you can actually catch them in the act of firing firecrackers, we'll expel them. But you got to actually see them do it. And so I don't know if you've ever been in either one of those dorms, but there's just 2 floors, and there's a stairway at both ends that goes down to a landing and then go down. And I found out that I could go down there and get in that on that landing, and I could look down and see the bottom floor and look up and see the top floor. And I could guard both floors at the same time. And their favorite way of firing these firecrackers was they'd wait till about 1 o'clock in the morning, go in the men's room way down at the other end of the hall, then they were throwing cherry bombs. You remember the cherry bombs? I mean, they were really stout, equal to a fifth a stick of dynamite. And they would light one of those things, open the door a little bit, and that hit that terrazzo floor and just ricochet off the wall and go off way down to the other end. And the students would come out of their rooms and everything, what happened, you know, and whatever. And so I said, we nailed 7 of them. We got all 7 of them one at a time, but I had to lose a lot of sleep to do it. You know, I would get 3 or 4 hours sleep a night. And we got nailed all but one. And the last guy was from California. He was senior, graduating. And I never could catch him at it, you know. He took a test for another guy, and the professor said that this is, you know, I mean, he knew all the students. He knew that wasn't the student whose test he took. So he got a yearbook and went through it and found that guy's picture. And that was the 8th guy that was firing firecrackers, and they expelled him. He never got his degree. He went to California and never received a degree. So we nailed all 8 of them, but I wrecked my health doing that.
Great story. Speaking of Dorn, what was did the guys have any hours at that time in those years?
Did the what?
Did the men have in their residence halls have any hours that you had to be in a certain time? Or curfew?
No, there wasn't any curfew or
men
deadline or anything. No. They had a lot of panty raids going on at that time. You remember the old panty raids?
I do.
Well, a lot of the football players in on it, you know. And so that story's in that Parable of the Sower notebook. And I mean, it wasn't a serious thing, but it, you know, got a lot of them in trouble. But
did you have activities in the residence halls in those days? You know, like there's a lot of programming and activities going on today.
Well, of course, homecoming is a big deal. To decoration for homecoming was a biggie. And we had what we call house meetings, you know, and have a rally or something and sing, and you know, it like out in Bennett, there's that big lobby right, you know, right in the middle of the dorm on the first floor, and they'd set up the stairs and all around everything. And but not too much, but you know, once in a while we'd have something. Just have a band come in or something.
Did the residence halls at that time, did they build floats for homecoming?
Oh yeah, yeah. I remember the year we played. One year we played Air Force for homecoming, and from Adams to, I forget now, from Jets to Adams or something, you know. And so we hung a big old ball of atom, you know, out there in a tree, and this in Thatcher. And an airplane is diving into the ground, you know, and crashed, and the smoke, and had a fire going to smoke, you know. And we won first place for residence hall that year for that thing.
You should have for creativity, if nothing else.
Yeah.
Well, what about, we're talking about on campus, what about some off campus? What were the student hangouts at that time? Was it AEB, or what was popular at that time? Go out to eat or date or hang out or drink?
Well, the Euless Keyless Cafe down on Main Street. Now, it took me a long time to figure out what in the world that meant. Euless was her name. Eulass. Euless Keyless Cafe. Means it never closed. They didn't need a key. And I had to ask them, you know, what's all that mean? But they told me. Euless Keyless Cafe. And, you know, and so it was a popular deal because they stay open 24 hours a day, you know, and students could go down there at night, you know, 4 o'clock in the morning or whatever, you know, and study or whatever. And it was a popular hangout.
Well, now there's a place that opened that you might have heard of in 1957 called the Hideaway.
Yeah.
The original location. Did you
I didn't ever went in there, but yeah, it was popular.
Was it popular?
Yeah.
So you weren't a pizza lover, huh?
No. There was a place on the east, right across the street from Thatcher Hall on the east side was a 2-story house, and there was the man owned it, started a little cafe, and it was all he served was chili and beans, and chili with or without beans for lunch, just lunch. And I mean, students would line up plumb out to the street and to eat in that place, and it was very, very popular. And I mean, it was very, very good.
Another place around Knobloch was Swims, going pretty strong at that time.
Yeah.
Was there? Wouldn't have been just pretty close to Thatcher there as well?
Yeah.
On Knobloch.
Yeah.
It was a popular hangout.
And there was a cafe down Knobloch too that was very, very popular. And you know, anything that's within walking distance, because a lot of them didn't have a car, and I didn't have a car either. So I thought, you know, first of all, I couldn't afford one, and secondly, if I needed a car, I knew 2 or 3 guys that had cars, and I would borrow their car, and even if I just went downtown for a reason, you know, or go to the laundry or something, I would fill their tank up with gas. They were begging me to borrow their car. I never had trouble getting a car, you know. I mean, and they always needed gas, you know. But it's still cheaper for me rather than owning a vehicle.
Sure.
And it helped them too. So it worked out great. So I never owned a vehicle all the way through college.
Well, have you, looking back, think about all the things we've kind of talked about in your ocean experience, are there any special memories for you, any special events highlights that stand out in your student career there?
Yeah, there's several. One was I wondered if I talked to Neil Armstrong, who was one of the coaches, assistant coaches, and he also played before I ever got there, back several years, and he was on the coaching staff, and I asked him, I said, hey, what do you think of the possibility of getting Billy Graham to this campus? He said, well, probably. He said, why don't you go talk to the president and see if they'll invite him, So I went in and talked to Dr. Wilhelm, and they wrote him, and he said, now you need to get me their address. I don't know who to write, So I got him their address, and he wrote Billy, and they got an answer back. I think Grady Wilson wrote the letter back to him and said that our schedule is such, and he told him when we wanted it. This was in 1958. Said when we wanted them to be there, and they wrote back and said they're booked up solid. They can't come, but maybe at a future date. And that letter, and they sent me a copy of that to Thatcher Hall, and that letter you will get in your memorabilia stuff. That's one of them. Another one was I wondered if we could get Fellowship of Christian Athletes to come and give some testimony. And I'd met Don Mumaw, who was All-American at UCLA. He came to Colorado Springs to Glen Eyrie when I was there. And so I wrote, went in, I talked to Neil Armstrong again, and Neil was a fine Christian man. And so I said, what do you think we can get Fellowship of Christian Athletes to come and talk to the athletes? And he said, you need to go talk to Henry Iba. So I went in and talked to Coach Iba and said, what's the chances of us getting Fellowship of Christian Athletes here? And unbeknownst to me, he had a big part in the formation of the Fellowship of Christian Athletes. So he was very receptive to the idea. He said, all right, you invite them, I'll get the athletes there. So I wrote them, and they were going to send Don Mumaw, Don Botsford, who played for Canadian Football League, and Ray Thompson, who was All-American at Rice, track. And those three were going to come. And something happened. There was a death in the family or something. Don Mumaw couldn't come, but the other two came. And we had a meeting, and I mean, when Hank Iba says, you go to that meeting, they were there, and it was a great time. No response or anything, but it was, he got the athletes there.
Did you ever meet Don McClanahan? Wasn't he one of the
He was the one that founded it. Yeah, no, he left. Campus. He was there a year before me on the coaching staff, and Coach Iba, I have that whole story telling about all the details, but Iba got him a job at Southeastern at Wilburton. So he left just the summer, and I got there in that fall. He left and went to Wilburton, and that's where he actually got it off the ground. Got it, with Iba's encouragement and everything. Why he got it established, and that's where he says got it started. But the idea he got at OSU, as A&M then.
Jack, did you maintain your relationship with the band after you left? I mean, there's an alumni band and so on. And being a student announcer, did you maintain contact?
No, because I was, I went to seminary. I was totally out of the area and had no contact with them after that.
Well, can you share with us, maybe just briefly a little bit, Jack, about your career? I mean, after you left Oklahoma State University, and have you managed to stay connected with the university over the years?
Yeah, I mentioned earlier that I wrecked my health doing that, trying to catch those guys firing firecrackers. Being an ex-serviceman, I really, I had a real heart understanding for those Korean War veterans, because I was one. And I lost so much time and sleep that I couldn't sleep. By the end of that semester in 59, I couldn't sleep. I mean, I was a bundle of nerves. My nerves wouldn't let me sleep. And so when I went to Glen Eyrie after that to work out there, they said, they saw my condition. They said, we need to get you out of here. You don't need to be here. You need to go somewhere and get rest. And they got a request for somebody to go over to Yuma, Colorado. Mr. Carl Hoke had 8 sections of wheat. He needs somebody to drive a combine. And they said, well, maybe you can go up there and, not have any responsibility, and you can just sleep at night. You'll be tired from driving a combine, They thought, that'll take care of it. Well, so I went up there and started driving this combine, but I still couldn't sleep at night. And Mr. Hoke was in his upper 80s, big old German fella, big, real tough farmer, as old as he was. But he was concerned about my health. He had an employee before that had a thyroid deficiency, and he thought that was my problem. He took me to Denver to a clinic after we got through combining, and he told him, he said, "Now, I'll pay for it, but I want you to find out what's wrong with this man." He said, find out. If you have to test him 3 times and everything, find out and cure him. Do whatever you need to do to solve his problems. So they did. They run all the tests, everything 3 times. They came in, and when the elderly doctor, gray-headed, and he was nervous as a cat. And he said, "Jack, we've tested you every which way." And he said, "There's nothing physically wrong with you." He said, "You have lost so much sleep, and you've run your health down to the point," and he showed him on a blackboard. He said, "There's a big old curve down here. There's a line that drew across there." And he said, "That's the breakdown line." He said, "Most people, if they get as tired as you got, when they get to that point, they have a mental or physical breakdown, total physical breakdown." He said, "You are in the worst shape of anybody I have ever examined, and you're down here at the bottom." He said, "Son, you could die sitting there in that chair." And he was afraid that's what was going to happen. That's why he was so nervous. He thought I was going to die in his office. He said, "We have a new tranquilizer we've come up with, and it's not habit forming." He said, "It's no side effects." He said, "I'm going to put you on it 4 a day." He said, "We got to turn your nervous system off so you can sleep, so you can recuperate." He said, "I want you to take them 4 a day for a month." He said, "And then drop to 3 a day for a month, and then 2 a day for a month, and then 1 a day for a month." He said, "By that time, you can sleep at night, and your body will recuperate." He said, "Now, it's just like dropping a vase on the floor. You can put it back together, but it still had been broken." He said, "And if you ever get in this situation again, you're going to die. It'll kill you." And he read me the riot act, And so I went on those tranquilizers, and it got me back past that line to where I could rest on my own. And but that's how close I came to dying. And
did you go directly to seminary, Jack?
Yeah, right after that, I went straight from there to seminary in Fort Worth. Southwestern Baptist Seminary in Fort Worth. And we were holding youth revivals, and in fact, Jerry Kraft, a former OSU football player, and Shelby Wilson, a wrestler, won the gold medal in the 60 Olympics, was there, all 3 of us. And we started this little group where we'd go out and hold camps and conferences in churches. And I met a young girl in Shady Oak Baptist Church out in Hurst, and she was the only teenager in that church. And I asked the pastor, I said, "Hey, this is in edge of Fort Worth." I said, "There's a lot of, how come you only got 1 teenager in this whole church?" He said, "Oh, we used to have lots of them." I said, "What happened to them?" They all went over to Bellevue Baptist. They built a Family Life Center, and they wanted to be near where they could play basketball. I said, "Well, how come she didn't go?" He said, "Well, she figured somebody ought to stay here and be a testimony to these younger kids." I said, "I want to meet her." So I met her, and she was a drum major of Bell High School band, senior in Bell High School. We dated, and I had to wait till she graduated out of high school to marry her. And I was 32 years old. So I'm 14 years older than she is. But she was very mature for her age, and I was immature for mine, so that put us together. But that's where I met her, and she's been a wonderful wife.
Well, kind of reflecting on what's happened to OSU now, have you been on campus recently?
Oh, yeah.
Campus development. Do you feel pride, or what do you feel about all of the
construction
of the facilities and what's going on?
I say it's about time. Yeah, you betcha. Very, very proud of it. And it's OSU has a tremendous history I remember when was SMU won the first national championship in baseball. You remember the very first one. And I thought we won so many. And I think OSU's second in the nation in the number of national championships of teams, athletic teams that they've won. But yeah, very, very proud of them. And they won in every event except football. Football has seemed like been a real tough road to make it in football.
Mike's off to a good start this year.
Yeah, you betcha.
Well, there's some other special sports highlights. Like, were you there when did you see the famous Kansas game against Wilt Chamberlain?
I was at that game. Let me tell you a little about that, okay? At that time, players could freeze the ball. You know, they could just dribble out there and go as long as they wanted to, and so that was the most. I mean, that was the most excited bunch of fans I'd ever been in a. You know, I mean, they were screaming just about the whole game. You know, and of course, Wilt Chamberlain. He changed his name to what? He changed it to something else, didn't he? It wasn't Wilt Chamberlain when he got in the pros. He changed it to. I can't remember.
I think it was Lou Alcindor that changed it to.
Yeah. Anyway, he took a Muslim name or something. Anyway, he wasn't Wilt the Stilt anymore, but that was his nickname in college, Wilt the Stilt Chamberlain. And Mel Wright was, in fact, Eddie Sutton was on that team. He was a player. But it was the score was, I believe, tied up. It just went back. It was the most perfect basketball game I ever saw. I think there was only one foul in the whole game. I mean, it was just almost a perfect game, you know, and very, very tight. You know, just back, they'd score and then we'd score and then they'd score and just back and forth like that the whole deal. And it came down to 7 minutes before the end of the game, and I was, you know, the picture they took of that at the end when it was over and the ball was going toward the hoop and Wilt was standing there looking at it, went over his head. You remember that? It's in that calendar. You'll get that calendar. It's in that calendar. I was behind that camera, sitting back up here in this corner, and 7 minutes before, the score was tied up, and they froze the ball. It was on the south end, and Mel Wright was standing out there just dribbling, frozen for 7 minutes. And it seemed like an eternity. I mean, you know, and everybody was standing up just screaming at the top of their voice. I mean, you couldn't hear anything, you know. And with about 6 or 7 seconds left on the clock, you could hear Hank Iba stand up and holler, "Shoot!" And you could hear him above the crowd now, and they were all screaming. And Mel Wright shot, and the guy jumped and it missed his fingertips about 3 inches, or he'd have blocked the shot, and it went over, and just it went through the basket. The buzzer went off, and we beat them by 2 points. And they only lost 2 games that whole year, Kansas did, and that one and the last game of the national finals, the only 2 games they lost all year.
But, great memory. What about any thoughts on Boone Pickens and particularly his academic gifts that he's made you recently?
Yeah.
Is that pride in that as an alum?
Oh yeah, you bet. I was glad they were able to keep the framework of the stadium. You know, didn't have to tear it all down and start over. They could utilize. I think it was a real credit to the architects that designed the whole thing to be able to save the framework and use that. It saved them a lot of money, you know, and it meant a lot to have that in the heart of that stadium. You know, it's beautiful and everything, and you hardly even know it's there, but they utilized it, sandblasted it, painted it, and covered a lot of it with concrete, but it's great. And so it really is a credit to them to be able to do that. You know, this last game with Texas A&M, I walked in. They had finally finished the West End. You know, and I mean, just that difference. It's just like you're in a different stadium. I mean, it made that much difference. You know, it changed a lot even before that. But when they closed that West End in and put all those suites up there and everything, I mean, you had a whole different feel. It was just amazing. It just took their breath away. And I asked to talk to a few people that from Texas A&M had been here before. You know, it was here a year before last when we played them, and they said this is beautiful. You know, they just couldn't believe how pretty it is. it's class A. I mean, it's really top class.
Jack, anything else? We've covered a lot of things. I really appreciate it. Is there anything we haven't covered you'd like to share, or is there any special memories or things you have?
Well, yes, there is something. The third, I mentioned there's 3 50-year, Frank Eaton died 50 years ago. That's 50-year memory of him. Pistol Pete started 50 years ago. That's 50 years. The other 50 is involved me, and that is God used my time at OSU in the soils department to give me technical background about planting and sowing and reaping, harvesting. And there's a lot of chapters and verses in the Bible about that. There's a lot of different stories about sowing and reaping, and so God put me at Oklahoma A&M College, which became OSU, to get that technical background and learn technically about sowing and reaping. And that was one part. There were 3 parts, and one was I was raised on a farm, so I got a lot of first-hand experience about sowing and reaping, and then technical experience at OSU on sowing and reaping. And then plus added all the scripture in the Bible and put all 3 of those things. And so over a 50-year period from 1954 to 2004, I came up with and put that all together in a notebook called the Parable of the Sower Notebook to explain that parable. And so I'm giving y'all a copy of that today. And that was, I look back now, and I've just realized this month, after looking back and seeing the whole picture, that it was God's choice for me to be there to get that technical knowledge. And He chose Oklahoma A&M College out of all the universities in the entire world for me to get that training. So to me, that's God's approval about that school. And I think that I had a part in sowing some seed on that football team. You'll read that in that story, in that notebook I gave you. And so, if that's true, we may be experiencing the harvest. We sowed seed 50 years ago on that football team, on that field. And so, if that's true, then we're going to see a lot of amazing things happen on that football field.
And we're ready for it. Jack, thank you.
We'll wait and see if that's the case.
Appreciate it very much. And this concludes our interview. Thank you.
Okay.